Labor is facing criticism over $70 billion worth of state and federal spending and the inflationary effect it could have on our economy. Treasurer Jim Chalmers is defending the cash splash. He believes it's keeping the economy stable. Some economists suggest the spending blowout is delaying any interest rate cuts and adding further cost of living pain to households. The coalition is accusing the government of trying to sack and stack the RBA board.
And he simply doesn't know how to do his job. Well, if he'd got it right from the start, we'd be seeing inflation coming down faster, interest rates coming down. We'd see Australian standard of living much higher than it is. We've seen a collapse in Australian standard of living, which is higher, or the bigger collapse, than any other OECD country since Labor came to power. Our standard of living has been in free fall. There's no plan to restore it, and this Treasurer is panicked.
Joining me live is Nationals leader David Littleproud. Thanks so much for joining us. Do they really deserve this criticism, David?
Yeah, look, the Treasurer and the Prime Minister are very quick to blame the Reserve Bank of Australia, but the Reserve Bank of Australia reacts to the fiscal policies of the government. They're reacting to the actions of Jim Chalmers and Anthony Albanese. And when you've got a leading economist coming out and telling us that there's an extra $70 billion worth of spending in the budget that's putting pressure on inflation and keeping it higher longer, then the Treasurer needs to take responsibility. The RBA is simply reacting to their spending measures. And it's unfortunate the Treasurer wants to blame everybody else, but not take responsibility for the fact that our interest rates are staying higher longer. And I fear that we're now getting to a tipping point in the coming months that the economy could stall. And the only reason the RBA will have to reduce rates is because they fear the economy could fall off a cliff and unemployment could skyrocket because Anthony Albanese and Jim Chalmers have lost control of the checkbook and they've lost control of our economy.
All right, you're in Canberra today leading the Federal Council for this year, a big one in the lead up to the election. What has been on the agenda today?
Yeah, look, it's just to remind our delegates here that the Nationals have set the national agenda in terms of policy, whether that was initially with The Voice, our principal position coming out before everyone else, whether that's been the nuclear energy policy that we put in place that now is coalition policy, whether it be sensible vaping policy to protect children and to make sure that that excise goes into regional health and law enforcement, or whether it be taking on the supermarkets in making sure there's fairness and transparency from the farm gate to the farm plate. But what we want to make sure is that we're also looking to what needs to happen to reduce the cost of living pressure in the here and now. We need to get energy bills down as quick as we can. And the quickest way to do that is to increase supply, particularly of gas. And that gives us some short-term relief that'll drive pressure down on energy bills and also push down your costs of your food. But you also got to understand in regional areas, we've got families that can't fight this Albanese cost of living crisis because they can't go back to work because there are no childcare places. We've spent $4.7 billion on childcare subsidies, but not 1 cent in trying to create more childcare places so that families can go back to work and earn a living to pay for the spiralling costs that Albanese has created. So we want to focus in on making sure that we give regional Australia those tools, and particularly childcare, along with the health professionals we need, training them in the bush, because we know if we train them in regional areas, they'll stay there, to give that amenity, to give that confidence of people coming out, contributing to regional Australia, that they'll have the best healthcare that they can get. So just getting back to the basics of common sense and then making sure we give that reaffirmation around things like live sheep exports. That's the first thing, the first bill that I will reintroduce is the reinstatement of it. It'll get rid of the biosecurity tax that is taxing Australian farmers to pay for their foreign competitors to bring their product through our biosecurity borders, and making sure they've got an ag visa, got the workforce they need, but we bring in the people we need, have a sensible migration policy that also not only gives us the workers where we need them, but gives young people hope that one day they might own homes, to allow state and local government to get supply, build supply. And that's about a sensible migration policy in getting the balance and the parameters right.
Many people in the regions tell us they are rated second-class citizens in Australia. Many farmers more recently are saying they feel like victims, especially with the live sheep export bans and moving further to the cattle exports. What would you say to that?
Well, They are, and Anthony Albanese and his government has simply put regional Australia and agriculture under siege since they've got in. And it's all been ideological. And, when you look at the live sheep export and phasing it out, what Australians need to understand is by Anthony Albanese cutting and running, what will happen is there'll be the perverse and horrific death of millions of sheep from other parts of the world that'll take this market up that we cut and run from. And when you've got even teals like Kate Cheney in Western Australia now changing her decision around the support for banning live sheep is not, I don't think, predicated on ideology, but on a political reality that people in Western Australia have worked this out, that they're shutting down 3,000 jobs in Western Australia, 3,000 livelihoods for no scientific or economic reason. And in fact, there will be a perverse animal welfare outcome. And I think when you look at the cattle industry, they are scared that they are next, that this is all about ideology. And Anthony Albanese has proved that ideology out-trumps practical reality in his policy settings. And he hasn't even had the courage to face these people and to explain the science and the economic reasons. And that's why regional Australia feels they've been treated with contempt. But I'm proud of the fact that many people in Perth now back their fellow Western Australians in the regions who have been the victims of this. I think it shows that we're a fair country. And when people understand the issues, they're prepared to express that, and will express that at the ballot box. So Anthony Albanese needs to know that Western Australians have had a gutful of him and treating them with contempt when they handed him the keys effectively to the lodge at the last election.
Nuclear energy has been a big focus for you and the coalition. Why wasn't it such a big issue when you were in power in 2013 to 2022?
Yeah, well, it has been a long-held view of the National Party that nuclear energy should be part of the mix. It's only been through the courage of Peter Dutton, and since he's become a leader of the Liberal Party, that we've been able to have this sensible conversation to bring the Liberal Party with the National Party on this journey. And if we want to reach emission reduction targets and have baseload power that underpins not just keeping the lights on, but keep manufacturing going, we've got to replace our coal-fired power stations with baseload power that'll do that. And zero emissions nuclear energy can do that. And it's been the courage of Peter Dutton to take the National Party's hand on this. And that is something I think the Australian people want, is they want strength in leadership to come forward and to solve the nation's problems. We'll have an energy mix that not just has nuclear with some of those coal-fired power stations, but we'll have gas and we'll have renewables. And we've had a lot of renewables come in, but they've been done where existing transmission lines are. And regional Australia doesn't want to have a future that's littered with transmission lines, solar panels and wind turbines. They actually want a different future, one where they have high-paying jobs that gives that baseload power. And if you look at the 7 locations where we've articulated we will place these plants, there isn't any huge opposition to this, because they understand their role and the opportunities this brings to their communities. And
How
so
do you expect...
I think we'd be...
Sorry, I was just going to say, how are you expecting to get bipartisan support? I mean, the opposition is saying, well, Labor is saying it's a delay, it's expensive. So many people are saying that we can't even have the bans lifted.
Well, this is why we'll go to the Australian people and expect a mandate. And then what we will do is expect that mandate is respected by state governments and the parliament. And I think that if that mandate's provided to a Dutton Littleproud government, we're going to get on with the job. Make no mistake, no one should underestimate our determination to get this done. We will start immediately and make sure that we start the construction of the first 2 to be completed before 2040. But we've got to understand that we've got to 2050 to meet our emissions reductions. But that's why gas needs to play in the here and now of trying to drive down energy bills, of getting that in the system, because you can get new gas into the domestic supply in under 12 months. And unfortunately, we've wasted 2.5 years of demonising gas, and we'll do that in the short term. But the long term is this sensible transition that gives us that base load power, and that also makes sure that regional Australia has a different future. When you've got Zali Steggall, who says that we want to have a 75% reduction by 2030, but then has the audacity to oppose a wind farm in her own electorate. Only 8 turbines, mind you, but no, those peasant farmers can eat cake and have all the transmission lines, all the wind turbines and all the solar panels. That's where people get angry in the bush. And unfortunately, I just say to those people in teal seats, you are supporting the most entitled politicians in the country, dripping with self-righteous sanctimony, expecting regional Australia to bear the brunt of an international commitment that we are signing up to, but we want to do differently.
All
so
right.
I just please understand and listen to what we're wanting. We're signing up to it, but let us do it a uniquely Australian way.
Got to wrap it up. David Littleproud, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.